Here we are again. Welcome everyone to our not weekly, just community live stream. We have Callie here. She's joined us to chat a little bit about game writing and narrative. Much like what we've done in the past with like Dragoon talking about tech art, Hugo talking about game art in general, and programming with Marcos. This is a talk about not necessarily what we do here at Behold, but the area of knowledge per se. First of all, so everyone who's joining here, first of all, thanks for joining. It's been a long time since we don't stream, but it's because we're changing the schedule for streaming, and eventually we'll bring some random topic like this one, but normally we end up streaming or talking about our games, or the Behold Studios games, right? But anyway, today's gonna be fun little chat. So Callie, what can you tell people watching about you?
Okay, you already know my name. I'm Callie. I'm a writer and an English teacher here in Brazil. And now I'm working with Behold, but I've already worked with Vox Studios in another game before. And I am taking my master's in creative writing, which is in Brazil, it's kind of a newish area, but like in Europe and North America, it's very common. And I usually write stories which are like set in fantasy worlds or sci-fi or some horror stories too. So I'm much for what we call it, the fantastic in general. And I'm a huge fan of narrative. Like, I love consuming narratives in many forms. I love reading comics and books and manga, and I love watching anime, and I love playing games. So I'm a big narrative person. I usually play games which focus on narrative. Not that much for mechanics. Not a big Dark Souls fan, sorry. But I think that's it. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a great introduction. Just so I just reminded myself that I have to open the chat so I can see what people's writing, because I was about to say, like, if you have any question, you're watching, if you have any question, please ask us. Give me just 1 second so I can open the chat here, because otherwise I won't see what anyone's talking about. Just 1 second. Okay, I can ask you one question, so you can talk while I'm dealing with this.
Yeah, we can do that.
Yeah, we normally ask people, like everyone that I've invited to this live stream, I've asked them, like, how did you stop, like, how did you end up making games? Like, what is the journey behind all that? Like, what in the earth brought you to this medium specifically?
Okay, so I started playing games like a little late in my life because it was like boys stuff for my family. So when I was like around 17, I started playing, and I bought a PSP, and I played lots of things like illegally in my PSP, and I kind of fell in love with the whole thing. But of course, at that point in our lives, we're told that we have to, do something and get a job. And as we're in Brazil, it's like as if some of these things, like writing comic books, for example, or writing for games, don't exist. So I took my degree in English, right, in English language and literature. And when I started writing, at some point, I was like, okay, but I really wanted to write for games and comic books. And those were the goals. So for a long time, I wrote mainly in English, which was good for training. but it kind of also ignored that we have a local market. And when I started writing in Portuguese and writing like more focused on writing fantasy and shorter stories, when I was writing in prose, right, it opened a whole new set of possibilities, and I started seeing how things were in our market here in Brazil. And then at some point, Vox Studios opened that spot for someone to help them with the narrative of Case and the Wild Masks, which will be out until the end of the year. It's very nice and it's very cute, guys.
Cool.
I recommend it. And I was like, okay, that's the thing, you know, that's exactly what I want. And I talked to them, of course, sent my texts and all that, and then they called me, and it was very nice working with them. And it kind of opened my eyes to the fact that I could work with games even if I was still here in Brazil.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started like getting in touch with more people who work in games. And at some point, people started tagging me at this very, very nice announcement that Behold Studios had made, like, dude, you gotta try this one. and I did.
Awesome. Okay, so if you're watching this and you want to like get exactly the name of the game that she just mentioned, you can ask her directly in our Discord. Okay, so if you're wondering what is the game that you work for, and remember the name of the game, so you can later look for it, ask her in our Discord. You can get it on. You can get inside our Discord through discord.gg/Behold Studios. I'll send it on the chat as well. Discord.gg/Behold Studios. It's a lovely community, and we share all sorts of stuff there, and we have a lot of lovingly people talking to each other. You should join, definitely. Okay. Yeah. People are asking. Okay, so one thing, I've just turned on the chat, so if you sent something that I did not comment, you can send it again, so I'll read it this time. Nightforge is saying, "Oh, the PSP era, fond memories."
Yeah.
She's a fan. She's a fan.
Yeah.
She had a Vita.
Two.
Yeah, two of them. Okay. Red Lang saying, "I know, right? I used to play it all the time with my cousins and friends." Hugo's here as well, watching cool story for real. Red Lang saying, "Okay, nice to have you all here in the chat." And unfortunately, indeed, that was lovely to hear. It's nice to see such a positive stories on this field. That's true. That's true.
That's nice.
Okay, so. Okay, now to the main subject of this live stream. What obviously, like, concepts are very hard to totally define, and you know they have all the layers of subjectivity in them. But what for you is like writing for games and narrative design? I know those are like kind of overlapping areas. I don't know. Could you just talk a bit about that?
Yeah, sure. Well, I think the not that it's too different, but the main difference, you know, when you're writing a short story or a novel, and when you're writing for a game, or when you're like designing a narrative, is that you have to be a bit more focused on experience. Like, what experience will people have when they are consuming that? Because the way you do that in a text is the reader is more passive, right? The reader doesn't interact that much with the narrative. The reader interacts with the narrative like inside their minds. So it's not as active as when you're playing a game. So when you're designing a narrative, you have to think about what it's going to feel like, not only to live the narrative, but to absorb the narrative. Like, how is it going to feel if the player gets this piece of information this way or that way? which of course we can make a parallel here with writing, like people who are huge fans of Lord of the Rings, for example, think it's very nice when you have a huge chunk of text explaining something about the world.
Minute details, like every single detail that you could possibly put into it.
Like everything is there, and I think Tolkien did a great job defining the genre, basically. So it's very nice, and I think he did what had to be done at that point in time. But nowadays, when you're going to write, you would tend not to like that kind of stuff, right? Or like hard sci-fi. People who like Asimov love it. Huge chunks of text just explaining everything. But nowadays, we tend to focus on other ways of telling the story. But the reader is still passive. The reader is still like, he or she can, of course, stop reading. Like, no, I don't want to read this anymore. But it's a passive way of consuming that narrative. So it's not just thinking about like, okay, do I want this to be a huge chunk of text, or do I want this to be small chunks of text? But also, do I want this to be music? Do I want this to be sound effects? Do I want this to be visual? Do I want this to be the player not being able to control something, the player maybe not being able to, I don't know, jump, but they were able like 10 minutes ago, so now it's different, and that also is a way of telling the player something. So I think it's about like trying to understand the experience, trying to pass on an experience. And then it's not that the story itself or the plot or the characters are unimportant, they are extremely important. But there are also other elements which are not text. And I think that's the kind of the challenge, when you're designing a narrative. You're not writing a story, you are designing a whole narrative. So some elements may be similar. You're going to, at some point sit down and build the world. You're going to have to create things for yourself to understand that world that you're going to pass on to the reader/player. That's kind of similar. But the ways that you have, like the tools you have when you're designing a game, are much more diverse, much more diverse. So I think that's the main thing, to focus on experience, because you want to give the player a very nice experience. You want the player to keep on playing, you want the player to feel, I'm not going to say that you always want the player to feel good about having played, because sometimes you don't.
Sometimes you're just designing a miserable experience, right?
Exactly. Sometimes like that's your goal. You want the player to feel miserable. But then you have that set goal, that specific feeling that you want the player to have after enduring playing.
And you mentioned like obviously all the steps that you go through while thinking about a narrative design. But what there's a definition here that I think like we from storytelling medium, we're more used to use that term, but maybe those who are watching, they do not know the difference. Could you like just define the difference between like story and narrative in your way of viewing things?
Okay, that's a tough one. That is a tough one. I think a story is like the sequence of events that happen. That has to do also, like the way I see story also has to do with narratology, which is something that I've been studying I studied in undergrad, and I'm studying now. So I think it relates a bit more to the sequence of events that you have, right? And of course, it can have different flavors, but it's still thing that happened because thing that happened because thing. And I think a narrative it's a broader concept, right? A narrative can emerge from a place in which there was no narrative. That's a huge thing in games in the last years. Like, emerging narratives, right? Narratives that were not there, but the players create them. So it's more than just this happened after that thing. It's it encompasses the vibe, like the atmosphere of a story, and it also has a sequence of events, but it's not just plot. I think story is more plot, and when we're talking narrative, it's broader, right? Lots of things can be inside narrative. I don't know if that was like clear in any way, actually.
I think it was. I think it was. We once were chatting about this, and someone came up with this idea of like the narrative is like, think of narrative as if you're asking someone how it was to play something. You know, it's more like that process of like, oh, it was amazing, and we joined, and then we had a group, and then we went through this quest, and this quest brought us these feelings, because in the middle of it something happened. It's like the whole experience through the eyes of the player, right? But that was also designed by someone. Like even those crazy moments that are somewhat unexpected and are not like written down in the story, they are part of the narrative, right? And they were designed somewhere in the process of designing the game. Amazing. Okay, let's check the comments here. Oh my god, a lot of them. That's lovely. The people talking about the Vita. I don't know why I even brought that up. I'm just kidding. I could never get behind Vita.
Yes.
I always needed the physical copies. Yes, that's tough. I want a Vita. Everyone wants a Vita. You see, you're not alone in the Vita. Yeah, you're not alone in this fanfare. Okay, once a game designer said, respect always the player unless you're making a rage game. Then disrespect them as much as you can. Yeah, that's that's a valid way of making games. You're gonna piss some people off and probably have a very strong hate community for this game, but anyway, it's valid, right? Along the lines of narrative experience, are there any specific games you would recommend that appeal to you as a creative writer? Nightforge is asking. That's a good question.
Yes. Nier Automata.
Oh my god, this is okay. You've seen me, you in the chat, you've seen me lose my mind over Nier Automata like multiple times in the past. I swear to you, I never told her that. Okay, just keep going. I'll try to keep myself from going crazy here. Okay, just go.
No, I think Nier is amazing. Like, it's a great experience. I think the use of different elements, to tell a story in Nier is just amazing. And of course, it is a game which requires you to have some knowledge of different gaming genres. It requires you to have some gaming skill. It's not a game that you can just sit and play. And sometimes I think that someone who play Nier as their first game might not think it's, all that.
It kind of plays with that knowledge that you have, right? Like, it's part of
the... It's not it's a game that takes into account that you've already played games, that you know the medium, you know how it works, you know what to expect. And I think we're very big on breaking expectations. I think Game of Thrones had a huge impact, like on how we see narrative, right? As a whole, I think people started wanting more narratives with bigger and dirtier plot twists. So I think what I really like about Nier is that it does give you that, but it doesn't give you that just because it's going to give you that, It really gets you entranced in that world and in that story. And it makes you love and hate those characters, and it uses so many things, like side quests tell you stories, and the way they're dressed that's amazing. Like, the way they're dressed is both kind of doing something to the player. It's kind of saying, hey player, yeah, we know you want to see her panties. and it's at the same time like twisting this notion of the waifu, so that is amazing. And gameplay, like, I'm not gonna spoil anything, but there are moments there when you're playing and it makes you suffer. It really
right? Oh my
makes
god,
you
so good.
suffer.
Yes.
And that's amazing. Like the way you are controlling the character changes to show you how much she's suffering, and you suffer with it. It's
Yeah, I know. Okay,
I'm
so
so
here's the
bad.
thing. We gotta have like a spin-off version of this live stream. So just so we can chat about Nier Automata, because we have like I think half of Behold is fan of Nier Automata and has like Nier Automata's top video games like in their lives. I don't know. It's just, yeah, we gotta chat about that. But
Yeah.
I'll try not to go too much into Nier Automata, but I
All right.
absolutely agree with you. Like, it's just an amazing game. You people should try it. If you haven't played, you should.
Definitely.
And I should play it again because it's just that good. And Red Link is like saying that I'm such a fanboy, and I am. I'm not afraid of that. Like, I'm not in any way embarrassed for that, because it's an amazing game. But anyway, all right. So we have an awesome game as inspiration. You want to go through any other title? Because I know like Nier is just. But anyway, do you want to like mention any other?
Well, I'm a huge fan of the Persona series, and I think it's very niche. So it's not everyone who likes that kind of stuff. But I think it's a very balanced way of, you have a narrative, but you still have aspects of it which are dungeon crawling and just grinding. And I love grinding. I just love that. So I think it's a nice game in terms of combining a narrative which is much more linear than what's more popular right now. But it still gives you that novelty feel all the time, and I think that I really like the way you create connections with the characters, like the side characters. I think Persona is a great example of nice. A nice crew, that is something very, very nice. I think Persona 4 does a better job in the social links aspect, but Persona 5 is obviously the best one out of the 3 that I've played. And I think it's, if you have 100 or more hours to play something, it might be worth it.
Yeah, that's it's funny because like when we start working with games, it seems like we end up having less time to play games. Like, and I don't know, it's been like so much time since I look at a game and see like, okay, 100 hours. Yeah, I get that time. I'll do it. I'll go into that. But I miss it. It's like I normally just get a Persona 5 and play a few hours of it and see like, okay, that's enough, which is a shame. But anyway. Okay, so talking about like the narrative design itself, like the way you work in it, how would you describe like your average day as a narrative designer? Like, I don't mean like necessarily what we've been doing for the past week, but what would you say is something that narrative designers or writers do in game and during development, just so people like get this more realistic version of what it is like working with this?
Okay, so I'm the kind of person who likes notebooks. So I write a lot. Like, I just write and write and write. I think at least that's like my process of organizing my thoughts. But I think it's very much about writing things down so that you can create links between them. I think that's the process that happens more often, because you've got lots of ideas, and then you have to to it's not that you have to experiment with all of them, but you have to at least have a place in which you can throw them there and you can see if they fit with it. There are so many elements for you to combine, and so many things which are external to you, things that programming is going to, that art's going to deal with. So you have to kind of be always trying to fit things together. I think that's the main process. Like when I was working on Case, we had lots of meetings in which I would bring tons of ideas and and they had to like, it was kind of modular, you know. Okay, this can fit with this, but it could also fit with this. So you have to be always trying to make things fit with each other, so that things work as a whole. Because you can have sometimes an amazing plot point or an amazing character, but if that plot point or character doesn't fit with the overall narrative, then so I think that's maybe the main part of the job. You know, you have to be thinking solutions and thinking how things can fit with each other. So of course you're gonna you have to come up with lots of ideas all the time. Not all of them are going to be used. I'd say most of them are not going to be used. part of the process, but it's better to have a whole that is fluid and interacts with itself in a nice way than to have just one very incredible idea. So I think that's, you know, the biggest thing about it. And of course, at some point you just sit and write too. At some point you just
eventually do that. Yeah.
Eventually, when everything's kind of together, it's like, okay, this is working. Then you sit and write.
Cool. Awesome.
And write.
Yeah. Endlessly. All right. Nightforge has another question here. In terms of writing for games, how does the work measure up against your capacity? Like, do you find that you're able to write more stories than can ever be used? Or can the level of detail of and the fluid nature of details during the development be a bit too much to keep track of? Yeah, he said he got the feeling that the answer has come, kind of. But if you want to add anything specifically.
I don't know. I think that it's very nice to always have everything that you think of written down, you know. I think that's very nice. And I think when we're writing, that's why I like writing physically, you know, on paper. Because sometimes when we're writing digitally, you can kind of just delete or erase whole paragraphs or pages because you're like, oh, no, I'm not going to use that. That's fine. And then maybe that's something that you actually want a few months later. So I think that's it's nice to keep track or to have at least, you know, a register of everything that you do, that you have thought of. And I'm not that good with diaries. Like, I don't keep creation diaries, but I like to keep track of the things that I'm thinking in terms of this idea has come up, this idea has come up, and I think it's nice to keep track. But probably many things that you've thought of are going to be lost along the way. But I think that's just how writing goes anyways, you know. Sometimes I'm just, because I have a huge box of notebooks at my house. and sometimes I just go there in the box and I get a notebook, like an old notebook. And there are so many beginnings of stories and poems and just like lots of stuff there. Sometimes complete just left there, and I haven't done anything with them. So I
think you got censored by the internet connection here.
Oh no,
it was
sorry.
It's just like, and then you cut, you know.
It's just like that. I think that was like, it's just like that. Writing and creating is, I don't know if anyone who's watching has ever worked with like creating music, for example. Like how many drafts how many times you create a riff for something and you just kind of never see it again. So I think creating is that, and I heard someone talking about taking pictures once, and it was like, when you take a picture that is really good, you have probably taken 200 other pictures which were not as good. And I think that's it. You're going to lose stuff along the way, not because they're not exactly good, but maybe they're not proper for that. And it's all part of process, creating, go ahead is process too.
All right. Perfect. Okay, that was a good. I think you're gonna find this a very good answer, Nightforge.
I hope so.
Yeah, and
I did my best.
I have another question for you. What would you say? Like, this is another one of those that I tend to ask for anyone that's invited to the I would say show. It's not a show. If anyway, the live stream. But what would you say to someone who's like, who wants to become a narrative designer and who wants to write for games? Like, how to start on that? How to kickstart that career?
First, play lots of games. And if you don't want to play, or if you don't know how to, or you can't play, like, there are many games that I can't bring myself to play, be it because of the skill required, or because I'm not like that into the theme of the game, but I still like watch the gameplay, because we always have to know the trends, and we have to know how things are being done, and you can never just consume one genre of things because that's the genre you're into. You have to have lots of different references, and study, but like really sit and study, like go after courses if you can, or just download content, but not only on games. Study writing, study narrative, study the structure of narrative, study films, study series, study short stories. You don't have to study all of these, but think critically, about everything that you're consuming. It kind of ruins being a fan. So that's why it's so great when something like Nier Automata comes out, because you're like, no, I can be very analytical and it's still awesome. And know what people are doing around you. I think that's very important. Know what people are doing around you. Try to get to know studios that are cool. Try to understand how things are being done in your area. And don't approach people or studios with an idea. Like, see what people are doing. If you have friends who are into making games, then maybe you can call those friends and you can try, to do something. Don't be start simple if you're going to do something with friends, because making games is hard and expensive. And if you have like this huge project that would take a AAA studio to finish, you're not going to finish that with your friends. So measure time in a reasonable way, because time is an investment also. But try to see, build community. That's the thing that I think works for anything you want to do, be it music, be it literature, things that are not so formal, that it's not like, being a doctor, you're out of med school and then there's probably a job at a hospital for you. These things which are more informal, you have to build community. So it's nice that you go to events, for example. Oh, there's a gaming event here. It's fine if you're not working with games at the time, but if you go there, maybe you'll meet people and you'll talk to people, and you're gonna get to know, the people who are working with that close to you. Because at least for me, it was very important to understand that things were being done close to me, not just like at Ubisoft. Or it's not just far away. It can be very close to us. So I think building community is a great way for you to enter really the places in which people who are already working with games search. Then you get to know these people, and maybe at some point one of them will look at you and say, "Hey, you had an idea that we talked about at a bar once. Remember? Why don't we try that?" And I think that's something that's. I'm not saying that is going to happen. That happens a lot in literature. But I think building community is a very, very important part of
Awesome.
working with games.
Awesome. So full disclosure, we did not agree on like saying this, okay? So if there's any coincidence, and there are multiple of those, and what she's saying and what we've said before multiple times here in these live streams, it's a coincidence. It's not actually a coincidence, just because it's true, all right? So believe it, believe it.
I mean, I am working with you guys for a reason.
Exactly. So yeah, important, right? So take notes of this. If you missed what you just said, watch it again, right? This video will be on YouTube eventually. So stay tuned for that. We're talking about talk show. It was my bad. It's not a talk show. It's a live stream, right? I don't have that. I cannot dream with this. It's not a talk show. Anyway, right. We have, I think, we've covered most of it. Is there anything you want to like just share with people that are watching? If you want to like end up with any high note on what we've talked, I don't know. Just bring anything up.
Thank everyone who's watching, because I haven't done that. Like I didn't thank you guys in the beginning, so thank you. And stay tuned for Behold's updates on stuff.
Right. Is there a way? Okay, so now going more to the particular level, is there a way that people can reach you if they have any questions besides obviously our Discord server?
So there's the Discord server, and people can find me on Twitter at Kali de los Santos. It's KaliDeLoSSANTOS. And I think that's it.
Right, awesome. So thanks for coming, everyone. If you have any other questions, you can reach her either through Discord or Twitter. And well, thank you, Kali, for joining us. It's amazing. Welcome to Behold team once again. And it's awesome. Stay tuned, guys, if you want to like. You can't imagine the crazy stuff we're working on, and we cannot like talk much about it right now, but we will eventually. And when that moment comes, it's gonna be very exciting for all of us. So yeah, you can see in her smile that you know, she's hiding something. Anyway,
yeah,
yeah, good to see you all here. Thanks everyone for joining, and I see you all eventually. Because I don't know when it's gonna happen again, but probably in 2 weeks. All right. Bye bye, everyone. Oh, and let me finish.